Campaigners say they'll press ahead with a day of mass action tomorrow against plans for a new coal-fired power station at Kingsnorth. They're threatening to shut down the existing power station on the site by air, land and sea. But it's claimed a river protest can't go ahead because of safety fears. Police say the Medway Harbour Master has refused permission under river bylaws. Assistant Chief Constable Gary Botridge says action will be taken. Meanwhile, two people who had superglued themselves to the front door of the Royal Bank of Scotland in London this morning have been arrested. The demo was part of the week-long Camp for Climate Action outside Kingsnorth. Meanwhile, several politicians have expressed concerns over policing of the camp. Green Party MEP for the South East, Dr Caroline Lucas, and Liberal Democrat MP for Lewis, Norman Baker, have jointly written to Kent Police calling for action to resolve the increasingly threatening confrontation.
Now, an extension of police powers to stop and search anyone near the climate camp in North Kent is undermining our civil liberties. That from Kent MEP Caroline Lucas. The step's been taken by Kent Police ahead of the planned day of action tomorrow by protesters who are against plans for a new coal-fired power station at Kingsnorth. Police claim they're still finding people carrying items that could be used as weapons, but Caroline Lucas says there's no reasonable grounds for doing this.
I think it is undermining our civil liberties, and at the moment at least there's absolutely no reasonable grounds to be doing that. It's obviously disrupting lives of people all around that area in a very unnecessary way. I would also argue that it's undermining the legitimate right to protest. I've written to the European Commission asking them to look at that. There is a human right to legitimately and peacefully protest, and I think there are times when that is an absolutely right thing to do, and the police seem to be making it impossible for people to carry out that basic right. So I think there are a number of key civil liberty issues here that will need to be looked at.
Well, anyone on the Hoo Peninsula can now be stopped and searched as a war of words grows among the protesters. But Assistant Chief Constable Gary Buttigieg says the move's justified. He's been speaking to our Home Affairs correspondent Richard Smith.
It was a decision that was taken not lightly. We didn't want to do this. We have used stop and search, as you're aware, and we've arrested 3 people during the course of that process with knives. But also, we've stopped other people who've carried implements that could be used as weapons, things such as lumps of wood, axes, chisels, etc. So this decision was taken primarily to protect and safeguard the residents of the Hoo Peninsula, to protect and safeguard the law-abiding overwhelming majority of the protesters, and to protect and safeguard my officers.
What does it mean in practical terms for people moving around the Hoo Peninsula?
For people on the Hoo Peninsula, what it means is that an officer could stop you and demand to search you.
How do you think the locals will respond to that?
I think they'll respond to it positively. We've had a great deal of local engagement with local people. They know why we're there. They know that our principal aim is to protect people on the Hoo Peninsula, including the residents, to make sure that we try to have this protest go off as lawfully and as peaceably as we possibly can, and also to ensure that law-abiding and lawful economic activity can continue. So we've been very, very clear about the aims of the police operation.
Given that the stop and searches will be at the discretion of the officers, how will they decide who to stop and search?
Well, they will be given parameters within which to operate, different localities. They will respond to intelligence in terms of what they're briefed about, and they will use their own discretion if they believe it's appropriate and lawful to do so.
But they don't have to have reasonable grounds, which means one would assume that there's no profiling going on. It's going to be completely random.
It won't be completely random, but they do not have to have grounds through which to justify it. They will still have to record the account. They'll still have to record the stop. But these are powers that have been very, very carefully considered by a senior officer and authorised because of the circumstances that we face.
I was going to say, you say that you've held back from extending the powers to the extent that you have now. Does that suggest that things are not going quite as well as you hoped they were going to?
No, we believe that things are under control. There have been some difficulties. We anticipated some difficulties. I believe, and my officers believe, the overwhelming majority of the protesters are law-abiding people there for a legitimate reason. But I've been clear on this point. We believe there is a small, hard core of people who are prepared to use criminal tactics and criminal activity to get their point across. And this is aimed at that small hardcore.
We've been speaking to a few people, some of whom have approached us of their own free will and said, we're getting a bit fed up with this. We keep getting stopped and searched. We live, or at least, at the very least stopped. We live nearby. People want to know why I'm going for a jog at 3 PM and things like that. What could you say to those people?
Well, we've not meant to antagonise anybody who lives locally, or indeed anybody else. These are unique times on the Hoo Peninsula. My officers have a very, very difficult and complex operation to run. The protest will be over very, very soon, by the end of the weekend. But while this is going on, we have to uphold the law. We have to make sure that people are safe. We have to make sure the protesters are safe. And I have to ensure the safety of my staff.
That's Assistant Chief Constable Gary Bowtridge talking to our Home Affairs correspondent Richard Smith. We'll be talking to Richard later after 8 o'clock. He's been on the camp yesterday just to get his idea of what's going on there. More reaction live from Kingston North after the travel. We're actually in the farmer. We'll be talking to the farmer whose field they are camped on. And of course, we'll be covering the planned day of action tomorrow with bulletins from 6 o'clock in the morning.